Hello, guys. This is RJ from Game News USA here today, and we're going to talk about not a video game, but we're going to talk about football games. And this is a brand new playlist called NFL Recap. Plan on seeing this weekly as we go through this NFL season, and we're going to try to break into a new demographic. So if you're here and you're new, please hit the subscribe button. Much appreciated. So let's jump right into this. We're going to go straight to the opener. I don't have much thoughts on preseason. Preseason was pretty mundane. But speaking of that, the Chiefs lost every single preseason game. But this ain't the preseason anymore. The Chiefs defeated the Baltimore Ravens 27-20 on opening night. They largely dominated the game. However, it did come down to a final play where Isaiah Likely's foot was just out of bounds. And so the Chiefs dispatched of the Ravens. Mahomes had a pretty okay game, 291 yards, a touchdown pick. Lamar kind of carried his team on his back for most of the game. But when it came down to the clutch moments, again, Fraud Jackson failed to deliver. He had a wide open Zay Flowers in the end zone, and he missed him. Totally missed him. A throw anybody could have made. Totally missed him. And again, he loses to the Chiefs. What do the Ravens have to do to get over the hump? I don't know if they can. Because their mindset is they can't beat this team. They just can't beat this team. The Chiefs are their kryptonite. Now, the Chiefs do a lot of winning against other teams. But when you have Lamar, who's a two-time NFL MVP, who has come up short time and time again in the playoffs and in big games, it just gets frustrating. Like, will you ever get over the hump? And I don't think he will. Derrick Henry didn't have much of an impact because the Ravens' offensive line was absolutely terrible. They had 4 procedure penalties called on them. And him taking the ball was like running into a brick wall. So it's a shame to see that. And I have some serious concerns for the Ravens going forward. I think this is more of a Ravens problem than it is a Chiefs win. Although it's a good win for the Chiefs. Friday night football in Brazil. Let me first off start off by saying this game was an embarrassment to the NFL for the footing of the field. Players were slipping and sliding all over the place. That being said, we actually got a really good offensive, high-scoring game. Some people were concerned with Jalen Hurts' turnovers, but hey, he ended up winning the game. They put up 34 points. Saquon Barkley looked great behind an awesome offensive line of the Eagles, and this was a highly entertaining game, maybe the most entertaining all week long. Jordan Love, though, unfortunately, took an ACL injury that he may be out 3 to 6 weeks for. So Jordan Love and the Packers are down bad. And I was fading on the Packers a little bit because prior to the beginning of the season, I said they'll hit the 7th spot again, which is a lot lower than what people expected of them. It's a tough division out there, folks. And the Packers are going to take some losses if they got Malik Willis as the starting quarterback. So definitely, immediately, the most concerned team in the NFL should be the Packers because they lost Jordan Love for a few weeks. All right, next up, we got a slate of Sunday games. Steelers and Falcons. Let's just call it what it is. The Falcons were totally fucking disappointing. They only mustered up 10 points against the Steelers. Kirk Cousins wasn't fully healthy yet. I think there's a lot of people, including myself, that are completely having buyer's remorse about the Falcons winning the NFC South, especially considering they got to go to Philadelphia week 2. They have to host Kansas City week 3. I am hopping off this Falcons bandwagon already. It's not looking good, folks. The Steelers didn't even have to score a touchdown. They relied on 6 field goals by Brian Boswell. So if you got him in your fantasy team, congratulations. The Steelers find a way to win. It doesn't matter. Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Mike Tomlin can just turn chicken shit into chicken salad and always have a winning season, even if we think it's the year he's not going to. All right, next up, probably the most entertaining noon game. I mean, there was several entertaining noon games. But Cardinals at Bills. Cardinals had a lead early, 17-3. Josh Allen just took the team and carried him on his back in the second half. And they ended up winning 34-28. Bills. Then we have the Titans and the Bears. The highly anticipated debut of Caleb Williams. And it went terrible for him personally. However, the Titans are so bad, they're inventing new ways to lose. They were up 17-0 on the Bears and gave up 24 straight points. And they did it because the Bears, they got a field goal, a defensive touchdown, 2 defensive touchdowns, and a special teams block for a touchdown. So without even scoring an offensive touchdown, the Bears sneak in a win against the Titans. Will Levis threw one of the worst interceptions I've ever seen. The Titans are going to be bad this year, folks. They're just going to be bad. I think Will Levis is not the guy. I think Caleb Williams will get better. We'll see how he does under Sunday Night Lights next week on Sunday Night Football. But the fact the Bears were able to win this game, a game they were not performing well in, is very encouraging if you are a fan of the Chicago Bears. Next up, we had the biggest upset of the day and the one that I'm most happy about. The New England Patriots went into Cincinnati and defeated the Bengals 16-10. So, first thing I gotta say is this. Our defense is real! The Patriots defense is real. I'm a Patriots fan, obviously. Look at the mask. Everybody wrote them off. They had the longest odds to win the Super Bowl. Guess what? None of that matters. When you go in and you play the game, you got to actually play the game. They're 1-0. And once again, the Bengals are off to a slow start. And it doesn't get any easier. They have to play the Chiefs next. Yes, the Bengals have had the Chiefs number in the past, but it's not looking good for the Bengals. They're going to have to turn things around rather quickly. And T. Higgins is hurt. So it's looking like an 0-2 start for the Bengals, to be completely honest. I don't care what the history says. They're in some trouble. Next up, we got Texans versus Colts. A couple things stood out in this game. First of all, Joe Mixon had 159 yards rushing. Joe Mixon's career is not over. Joe Mixon is ready to roll with a brand new team. Stephon Diggs with a touchdown. Key additions to the Texans offense is what's going to propel them over the top. However, they only won 29-27. I'm feeling a little better about the Colts, actually, from this game because Anthony Richardson looked really good. He had a throw that looked absolutely amazing, 65 yards in the air for a touchdown. And I think the Colts can definitely compete possibly for a wild card team. Who knows? But Texans rolling along there. Jags versus Dolphins. Tua had the best performance of the week as far as yards go, with 338 passing yards. Tyreek Hill, despite getting detained by the police before the game, had 130 receiving yards, including an 80-yard touchdown. And the Dolphins made a comeback down 17-3, ended up winning 20-17 on a last-second field goal. Again, Doug Peterson going for a fourth down deep in his own territory, unadvised, and not being able to pick it up, handing the game to Miami. I just don't understand what the Jags are doing. Something's going to change. They have a tough opening 6 games of their schedule, and at some point, it may have to be Trevor's out for Mac Jones or Doug Peterson's out for another coach, because I think this arrangement is not working. And as for the Dolphins, they have a fairly easy schedule, except next week when they play the Bills. They have a real opportunity here to open it up and end up starting off 10-0 or something, or 9-2 or 8-3. So good win for the Dolphins, despite the distraction of the Tyreek Hill detainment. Next up, we have Vikings and Giants. The Giants are really bad. Breaking news, just in. The Giants are fucking retards for giving Daniel Jones a giant contract because you're getting blown out by another team that people say will be a fourth-place team in the North, the Minnesota Vikings. Sam Darnold looking to resurrect his career, connecting with Justin Jefferson, having a very nice performance that's taking a first step into resurrecting his career, much like Baker Mayfield did with the Bucs. And it's easy to do that when you have the best receiver in the league, and the Giants can't play offense. So the Giants, your season's already over. I don't really have much else to say about you all, except you're stupid. The Vikings, they may have some life in them. Hey, you start off 1-0. It's a fresh season. Let's keep it rolling. Sam Darnold can actually play. He can actually play when he has a little bit of help, honestly. Next up, the most embarrassing game of the entire weekend. The New Orleans Saints thwacked the Carolina Panthers 47-10, making the Saints look like the greatest team of all time. The Carolina Panthers once again look like the team that's going to be, for the third year in a row, getting their own three-peat, has the single worst team in the NFL. They are stuck with an absolute bust, Bryce Young, who can't turn it around. He's too small and he's not talented, and this is not the same player that I had seen in college. And if you're the Saints, don't take too much stock in this win. You are playing a god-awful team that probably doesn't even deserve to exist. The Carolina Panthers suck. And maybe we'll go winless this year. Next up, we have Raiders and Chargers. We're in the 3 o'clock window now? No, this is still the noon window. Raiders Chargers, it's the debut of Harbaugh as their head coach. And they won a tough, gritty game, 22-10, which goes to show Chargers are good again in situational football thanks to Harbaugh. They have a whole different mindset and attitude of the team. They're not all about skill players. They're about those interior players and push. And the fact that J.K. Dobbins was able to rush for 135 yards is extremely encouraging. They lost to Austin Eckler in free agency. J.K. Dobbins is a pound-it, run-between-the-tackles guy. So they felt very happy to move on from Austin Eckler because they're changing their identity, and it starts in week 1, and they got the victory. 22-10. The Raiders punting whenever they're in a situation where almost every team would go for on 4th down, just punting it away and waving the white flag. I think that hiring Antonio Pierce was probably a mistake. I don't think the Raiders are going to go very far this year. I think they're a last-place team. Gardner Minshew's definitely not the answer. They obviously missed out on Michael Penix in the draft because the Falcons decided to trade up and draft him. And I just don't like where this team is going. I think that the pop and fizz they had last year when Antonio Pierce came in is over. I think the honeymoon phase is done. And the Raiders are hardly crashing back to reality, which is Antonio Pierce is not actually a good coach. He was a motivator for 1 year, but he's not an actual good X's and O's coach. And clearly Harbaugh had his lunch. Now we're in the 3 o'clock window. We got Broncos and Seahawks. The Seahawks were able to win 26-20, despite the fact the Broncos were able to get not 1 but 2 safeties. And Kenneth Walker rushed for over 100 yards. Geno Smith did his thing. The Seahawks were able to hold on and win. Denver has some way to go. I'm not completely abandoning ship on them being a dark horse wildcard team. I think Bo Nix will get better. But it is a really competitive AFC. I didn't believe in the Seahawks at the beginning of the year, but again, they start off 1-0. It's a new season. Let's see what they do. Geno Smith's a veteran quarterback. If this were any other week of the season, maybe the Broncos would have had a better chance, but this is week 1 right off the bat in Seattle. So I get why the Seahawks were able to pull off the win. Next, we have probably the second most embarrassing game of the weekend. The Cowboys thwacked the Browns 33-17, and it wasn't even that close. It was Tom Brady's debut on commentary. As far as his commentary goes, I think I'm more talented than he is in the booth. I think that he's got a little bit of restriction on him, and he can't really, he's got to play the company man, which is fine. I think he did okay in that role of just saying his points, and we moved on almost like any other commentator does. So I'm I don't know what anybody else would be complaining about or praising. It's just pretty standard. But I did like to see it and hear it. Deshaun Watson's terrible. He's cooked. His career's over, whether the Browns want to admit it or not. They've already given him the money. There's more allegations coming out about him. Maybe it's just time to shut it down for Deshaun Watson. Like, yeah, you already fucked up. You already gave him the money. But maybe you got to see what's going on the bench with Jameis Winston. See if he's got anything for this offense. Because this offense is pathetically bad. It is pathetically bad. Deshaun Watson was 1 out of 11 when he was pressured. He's not the same guy. It's over. It's done with. In the prime of his career, he threw away his NFL career. The NFL got heavy-handed with suspensions that I don't agree with. But at the end of the day, we don't have a time machine. We can't fix all the problems Deshaun Watson has. And considering the off-the-field issues, the Browns can move on from him anytime they want now and try to see if they could save their season. Cowboys look great. They did good against a really tough Browns defense that's going to have to try to carry them through most of the games. Dak looked awesome. And they actually did it on the road and in grass, which is different than last year. So I'm definitely higher on the Cowboys than I was when the season started. I thought they'd missed the playoffs. But they went ahead and gave Dak the money. I think it's a bad move long term. But short term for this year, it's going to make everybody happy that everybody's getting paid. So we'll see if that translates to wins on the field for the Cowboys. It definitely did in week 1. Next up, we have Washington versus the Bucs. Jaden Daniels also, just like Bo Nix and Caleb Williams, had some early season struggles here. But he'll grow into it. But the story here is Baker Mayfield, who in my opinion, after week 1, is the MVP of the NFL right now. I don't know if that'll stick. Probably not. But he threw 4 touchdowns. Barely anybody else across the NFL threw more than 2. And he threw for 289 yards. And he put up 37 against Washington's defense with Dan Quinn coming in. Has the new head coach who's trying to revamp that Washington defense. And Baker threw a party on him. Him and Mike Evans have a great connection. And they're simpatico right now. And the Bucs are looking good. The Falcons lost. The Panthers lost over the weekend. The Bucs really look like immediately I'm having buyer's remorse on the Falcons. And it looks like it's the Bucs division to lose. Although, like I said, with any of this stuff, you don't want to overreact because it is week 1. And people will overreact so much to what they see just in week 1. And you need to give it a few weeks for things to settle in. But the Bucs are looking great. Sunday Night Football. Rams-Lions. One of the best games all weekend. I think the Thursday night game was great. The Friday night game was great. And the Sunday night game was great, which is what the NFL wants. If those are 3 of your 4 or 3 of your 5 or your 3 best games all week, those are the 3 they want is primetime television. And we got the only overtime game of the weekend. The Lions were able to win 26-20. Just a great battle. Playoff atmosphere between Stafford and Goff. Stafford threw for over 300 yards. But Montgomery had 91 yards on the ground. Jameson Williams with 121 receiving yards, including a big play. And the Lions won the toss. Went right down the field. Run it right down their throats. And won the game. And that's why NFL overtime rules should be changed. I mean, they changed it for the playoffs. I think they just need to alternate 2-point conversions if they're still tied. Like, let's limit the injuries. Let's just alternate 2-point conversions if you're still tied. I know a lot of people don't like that. It sounds boring. I say, especially for the regular season, just do that to get the overtime done and get a winner. Rams never got to touch the ball, so sucks for them. But it is what it is. I had the Lions in this game. The Lions won. And finally, we have Monday Night Football. Jets, 49ers. 49ers win 32-19. It wasn't even that close. They already had waved the white flag and benched Rodgers at the end. And then Tyrod Taylor comes in and leads them on a drive that Aaron Rodgers was struggling to do all night. But The 49ers found a new running back, Jordan Mason. That's the story. 147 yards on the ground. So even with McCaffrey out, the 49ers look like an absolute juggernaut. Jake Moody had 6 field goals in this game, kind of like the Steelers did. But they also scored 2 touchdowns. And to be completely frank, the 49ers left points on the board. The only aspect in which the Jets' defense was good was holding them to the field goal attempts. Because the rest of the time, getting up and down the field was easy for the Niners. And they could have absolutely scored 40-ish or even 50 points if they had just put the ball in the end zone more. But they didn't need to. And they ended up winning the game 32-19. Good decisions by Shanahan not to get overzealous and go for it on 4th downs, just taking those points. I'm going to take the points guy. I think overall, in the long run, it definitely helps you to win games, to take the points. And they did take the points. So 32-19, I thought that Aaron Rodgers didn't look particularly great. I thought the 49ers defense looked pretty awesome. Their offensive line looks awesome. Brock Purdy, although shaky at times, didn't even have his best game. So, 49ers looking good in the NFC. I really like them to maybe win every game this year. I do. I like them to win the Super Bowl, but they have to get over the hump. And if they do see Kansas City again in the Super Bowl, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens if they get a third crack at them with the three-peat on the line. That would be insane. They do play in Week 6, so I'll be curious to see how that matchup goes. But you really can't judge what goes on in the regular season versus what happens in the playoffs. It's such a different atmosphere, even though that game will feel like one of the bigger regular season games of the season, and we'll definitely cover it on this channel. So, guys, I think that's it for this NFL Week 1 recap. Thank you all for watching. I hope you learned something or you got some insight from this. And we look forward to the games next week. We got a big slate coming up. You know, you got Bills-Dolphins right off the bat, Amazon Thursday. Sunday Night Football, Bears-Texans. Got Caleb Williams versus C.J. Stroud. Monday Night Football, you got Falcons-Eagles, Cousins versus Jalen Hurts. You got a slew of good games on noon and 3:25, including Bengals-Chiefs, 3:25 Central Time, 4:25 Eastern. Bengals-Chiefs. So, looking forward to this season, the rest of the year. And thank you all for watching. Peace. Have a good one.